How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. Today we're discussing a Gleyber Torres trade to the Seattle Mariners. Now, we've heard rumors, and the media is reporting this, that the Yankees are considering trading Torres as they did at the trade deadline. They were talking with Miami Marlins regarding Pablo Lopez. They wanted Jasson Dominguez or Peraza, and Cashman said screw off. Which was the right thing to do at the time. But you look at Gleyber Torres now, what his role is moving forward, his value. We've talked about him pretty extensively, but wanted to put together a mock trade so that we could see exactly what the Yankees could get back in return. And we're thinking bullpen support, right? Brian Cashman, Hal Steinbrenner, they've both said very blatantly we're looking for bullpen support. They feel like Clay Holmes is their closer. They don't have Chapman. They don't have Castro. They don't have Zach Britton. Not that they had Britton at all in the last 2 years, but now they need to fill some roles. The Scott Efros injury definitely put a dent in the bullpen, and they have to replace that. And finding a guy with some upside, someone they can maybe build around. They went and claimed Junior Fernandez, who we discussed from the the Pittsburgh Pirates the other day. So he's a decent little arm that may be able to extrapolate on, kind of Albert Abreu vibes, high velocity, a little bit lack of control. But the Yankees could look at Gleyber Torres and say, you know what, we got Peraza's playing shortstop. We got DJ LeMahieu. Donaldson's still on the roster. IKF was tendered at $6 million, who, they could end up trading him, could end up trading Donaldson. But then, Volpe, add him into the equation. Whoever doesn't win that shortstop battle probably ends up at second base. And, Torres becomes expendable in that sense. And a team that has a void like the Mariners, like they're looking to make a push for the postseason next year, and they have a void at second base. Gleyber Torres fits the bill perfectly. He's a good hitter. He's a, pretty above average defender at this point in time at second base. At least he proved that this past season. So, he has some value, Ryan. But when you're looking at Gleyber Torres, what do you think the probability of trading him is right now? And then we'll kind of dive into structuring a package deal that might make sense for the Yankees.
Yeah, so when we look at Gleyber Torres, I mean, he's a player that is, the way I value him is he's going to be, offensively, he's going to give you above average offense. Even when he was slumping in 2020, he still finished with a WRC plus over 100. 2021 was kind of the first year where Gleyber Torres was a below average hitter. And so I look at Gleyber and I look at him and I say, this is a guy who's probably going to give you a 110 to 120 WRC plus, somewhere in that range. He could push 125, maybe climb to 130 in his best type of season. But he's a steady bat. And I think, having security at the second base position, especially for a team like the Mariners, they don't really have that security, could provide a lot of value. Gleyber isn't going to be asked to be the star of that team. He isn't going to be asked to be the 1, 2, or 3 hitter, perhaps kind of slot somewhere in that 4 or 5 spot. They have Suarez, they have Julio Rodriguez, they have Cal Raleigh, they have Ty France. So they have plenty of talent around the diamond. And Gleyber is a supplemental piece for that talent, kind of like how he was for the Yankees this season. So, there are reasons you could argue for not trading Gleyber Torres. Most notably, you could point at, the looming questions about whether Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa will be here next year. The looming questions about how ready Anthony Volpe is. And then the biggest looming question to me, at least, and kind of the biggest X factor here is DJ LeMahieu's injury, right? Is he going to need surgery? If so, do you have a second baseman? I think the Yankees are going to wait to kind of get some news on DJ. They could. I mean, it's a big question mark there, but I do think the Yankees could get a good value for Gleyber. He's got 2 years of control, easy to extend. $9 million for Gleyber Torres is pretty decent value monetarily. And the upside here is you end up with a player who's going to have some upside at least and give you stability. And I think that's something that the Mariners could use. I think that's something the Mariners do value. And Jerry Dipoto and the Mariners are very active on the trade front. They've made hundreds of trades. I think it's over 100 trades since he's gotten there. He makes a ton of trades. So really just a fit that I think makes sense for both parties here if the Yankees feel confident moving on to Gleyber Torres, which I think they will.
Look, I mean, right now he's expendable because I don't think they view him as a long-term solution. I don't think that they view him as someone they're going to extend down the road. I think we know what Gleyber Torres is, and he's a good baseball player, right? He's 25 years old. They have control over him until 2025, a couple more years. So, I guess the argument to make is why open up a hole where you don't need to open up a hole? You know what I mean? Like why create a void where there currently isn't one. Gleyber Torres is a good enough hitter that if the Yankees added another really big piece, or if they added some more, talent to that batting order, have some healthy guys coming back, or some injured guys coming back, like DJ LeMahieu, maybe Benintendi, Masataka Yoshida, we'll see what they do there. Torres could be pushed down the pecking order a little bit and serve as a pretty valuable 5-6 hitter. And I think that's a place where, there is value for him. But end of the day, what do you do with Anthony Volpe? Who plays second base? You're not gonna stunt Anthony Volpe's development. You're not gonna not call him up because Gleyber Torres is at second base. They view Volpe as the future, guys. Peraza, they also view as a very high level infielder who will be competing for shortstop. I don't think IKF has a role on this team either right now. If you're looking at where he plays, maybe he slides into third base, but I'd rather DJ LeMahieu playing third base, Peraza at shortstop, and Volpe at second base once he gets called up. They could just do this. Like, what I actually see happening here is I think they managed to get rid of Donaldson. And what happens is I think Peraza starts the season at shortstop. I think IKF starts at third base and DJ starts at second base. But I think that changes once Volpe is ready to make the transition. If he dominates in spring training, they may just call him up immediately. But if they give him a couple weeks, if not a couple months, I think that IKF probably locks down third base until Volpe is ready. Volpe takes over at second and DJ shifts over to third base, which I think is a pretty decent, option. And Gleyber Torres in that sense is expendable. So if we keep Peraza and Volpe this season, they're not traded, which I don't think they will be. We know that Gleyber Torres' job is probably gone. We know that he's probably going to be traded. That's just the reality of the situation. They're not going to use him as a utility man. They're not going to use him as a reserve. He's a starting caliber player that has value. So looking at that specifically, there is a decent chance that they trade him to the Mariners. I think the interest is real. And if they were going to put together a package deal, Ryan, you mentioned a guy to me, specifically Matthew Festa, as a decent bullpen arm they might be able to gain, plus a couple of fringe prospects, guys that could pan out, could become duds, like any prospect at the end of the day. But what makes you so intrigued by the prospect of Matthew Festa? And the full package here is Matthew Festa, who's a right-handed relief pitcher. Jonathan Clase is a switch hitter, number 13 prospect in the Mariners farm system, and their number 16 prospect, Prelander Baroa, a guy who throws pretty hard and a high strikeout guy, starting pitcher. So, we'll start with Festa. Ryan, what makes you think that he would be a good fit in this potential prospective trade?
All right, so Festa is someone who is a high stuff, very much a big time, big time guy in terms of stuff plus. This is the type of pitcher that is going to grade very well in that metric because he has filthy stuff. He gets 15.6 inches of horizontal break on his slider. His fastball, while it only gets 17.6 inches, but it only gets 17.6 inches of drop, meaning it's not really supposed to be a pitch you're supposed to throw up in the zone. His release point, it sits around negative 4 degrees for his vertical approach angle, giving it this deceptive kind of action to it that allows it to play up in the zone. When it comes to vertical break, or when it comes to the ability for a pitch to play up in the zone, pitch movement matters, of course, but arm angles matter too. And Matthew Festa is a great example of this. His ERA last year was, it wasn't great. A 4.17 in Seattle is good for a 1.13 ERA minus, being his ERA was 13% worse than league average. But if you look at the strikeout to walk rate, 21%. If you look at the xFIP, 3.47, the Sierra 2.97, I look at a reliever like Festa and say the upside is there, right? I do believe this is a pitcher who can go out and give me, a strong ERA any given season. And, his stuff, again, it's very good. He doesn't throw very hard, but that's fine. Again, the way he releases the ball, it makes his fastball kind of take off a little bit. And then the sweep on his slider makes it a devastating pitch for swings and misses. Do I think that Festa is necessarily like, oh, this is like a Clay Holmes situation where you bring him in and he becomes, your best reliever? Not exactly, because I do think the Mariners are a very good pitching development organization. They're very analytically minded, but I do think Festa is just a natural candidate for some ERA regression in a positive manner for him. So we could see, an ERA in the mid threes. Steamer projects his ERA for next season at 3.77. And for context, Steamer is very conservative with their projections. So a 3.77 ERA would rank pretty well amongst the Yankee bullpen. And he would also probably be one of the 7th or 8th options in that bullpen. You already have Marinaccio. You already have Holmes. You already have King. You already have Peralta. You already have Loaizaga. Trevino's pretty good. Once we start getting towards the back end of that bullpen, throwing in a guy like Festa who could provide you a 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 ERA and do so with high leverage stuff and great upside to potentially be even better, it's a no-brainer for the Yankees. And as you mentioned, added with some prospects, this could really be a deal that the Yankees could explore making.
Yeah, so there are going to be people, I know for a fact in the comments right now that are saying, I do not like this deal. Gleyber Torres has more value than that. And the reality is that, we know what Torres is, and bullpen help is probably the best we're going to get from him. You're not going to get a starting level pitcher that's like top end rotation. It's not going to happen, especially one with control, unless you're looking for a guy that has big money. And, the Yankees are like, all right, we'll take him because he's good, but he also comes with a huge contract. So that's trying to be offloaded. So like that's another scenario that you could look at. But you're not going to get a top end. You're not going to get an above average outfielder. You're not going to get an above average, infielder for him. Like, why would you trade an infielder for an infielder unless you're going for like maybe a third baseman? But, trying to equate that value is really difficult. You're probably going to get prospects and bullpen help. Like, that's the reality of the situation. I know we all want to get ridiculous return and value from our players because we're Yankee fans and we're biased in that way. And I hope to God that they figure out a way to do that. But reality is that probably getting prospects and bullpen help, and the Mariners have pretty deep, at both spots. So, they just traded, for Teoscar Hernandez, and they gave away, who did they give away in that deal again? One big bullpen arm.
It was Eric Swanson, who was traded
Yes.
in the James Paxton deal from the Yankees. So kind of an interesting
Crazy
situation there. What a trade tree. I mean, that's a deal that probably hurts their bullpen depth. So, you have to obviously, they will probably like to make a move after to fill in that bullpen spot. But I still don't think Festa is like someone the Mariners may be clinging on to and say, no, we're not trading him for Gleyber Torres, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I understand. And right now, I mean, if the Mariners want that infielder, you can. But the thing is, bullpen arms are easier to find than starting level infielders. So, you can always call up a prospect in that sense. I mean, look what the Yankees did last year with Marnaccio. Greg Weisser is going to play a big role this upcoming season. So, you're seeing what your youth can kind of fill in those bullpen holes. And, the Mariners obviously have done a pretty good job doing that and have been trading them for assets along the way. And Gleyber Torres, for them, probably solves a big problem, in the infield and also in their batting order. So, he fills a pretty good role for them. I think they'd be more than happy to trade away Festa, who had a, +4 ERA last season, whereas you look at the more in-depth analytics and say, okay, he's actually a very good pitcher that just maybe wasn't utilized correctly, or maybe we could build on some of those pitches and he could be a pretty good arm for us moving forward. But, Gleyber Torres, it's tough because like I like Torres. I think he's a good player, but I also don't think has a future with his team. I don't think they were already considering trading him at the deadline, and he knows that, right? He knows he's not really needed there. If the Yankees were considering him trading him, that essentially means that they think he's expendable, and which tells us that he does not play into their long-term plans. So with that fact, and with us knowing this, it's safe to say that they have other plans at second base, which might be DJ, it might be Anthony Volpe, it could be Peraza, who knows, but they have more than enough options to fill that role. So very curious to hear your thoughts below in the YouTube comment section, my friends. Taking a look at this trade. So the overall deal, just to, say it one more time, is Matthew Festa, Jonathan Clase, a switch hitter, number 13 prospect, and Prelander Baroa. Obviously, you probably don't know either of those two guys, but some decent quality there could turn into something, could be flipped in another trade. Maybe the Yankees say, hey, you know what? Let's go get these two guys, and then we'll try to offload Aaron Hicks and send those two guys on their way, right? Like you never know what that might be. You could say, Gleyber Torres, if you want Gleyber Torres, screw the prospects. You have to take on Aaron Hicks's deal as well, or you have to take on some of Josh Donaldson's deal as well. That might be they may try to package Torres with one of those big bloated contracts to open up cash flow, which in my opinion is just as valuable, right? $10.5 million from Hicks's contract, extremely valuable. In finding, you can go and get almost sign Benintendi. You can almost sign Yoshida for that amount. So, what are your thoughts on that? Using Gleyber Torres as kind of a catalyst to get rid of some of those contracts.
I think you could definitely see something like that. You'd still have to eat some of the money because Gleyber is, while he's a valuable player, I don't think he's going to offset the value of having to pay Josh Donaldson $25 million. I mean, good God, that's a nightmare kind of situation for any team. So I think you'll still have to eat some of the money in that regard. And you also have to find a team willing to add on two infielders or an infielder and outfielder. I think packaging with Hicks is a little more realistic just because, if you're a team taking on Gleyber and Donaldson for the next, for 2023, just that's $34 million that is right there. That's $34 million that you're going to add. And you have to kind of figure out how much of that you're willing to take for those two players if you're the team on the receiving end. And then for the Yankees, do you think you can get, similar value for Gleyber Torres? Do you think you get value for Gleyber Torres? And overall, the value you get in the Donaldson and Gleyber deal is better separate them together. They're going to have a lot of questions to ask. Their teams are very stingy with roster spots, are very stingy with payroll. So, it's tough to ask any team to take on, $20+ million of salary. The Yankees, even when they made the Donaldson and IKF deal, they sent over Gary and Urshela, who were making combined around $14 million. So, the Yankees, you offset $14 million, that 25, you add about $4 million for IKF. They really only added like $15 to $16 million to their payroll for the 2022 season. So you may see something like that. Perhaps they could get, kind of like if you can look at like a Gio Urshela type player, not saying a third baseman, but, like a quality major leaguer who's getting a little expensive in arbitration to kind of offset that value, maybe that could work, right? For the Mariners specifically, I don't think they'd be interested in taking Donaldson and Hicks, but, for Gleyber, as you mentioned with the prospects, Prelander Berroa is one that I think really stands out to me as someone that can really be a great reliever, because I don't think the command's going to be good enough for him to start unless he figures it out, but he gets 20 inches. He gets 20 inches of induced vertical break at 96.5 miles an hour on average. So that's like a Garrett Cole fastball in terms of vertical movement and velocity. That's ridiculous stuff. And he's got a great slider as well. He's someone who just struggles with command, which is kind of the tale of a lot of power pitchers in Major League Baseball and a lot of younger guys in the farm system. He's 22 years old. He struggled at Double-A. I imagine he gets converted to the bullpen. That's just how I feel this guy's, developmental path is going to go. But with his power arm, I mean, if you can get, I look at him kind of like Luis Gil in the sense of like, the stuff is amazing. It's phenomenal, but you can't really trust him to go out there and, give you 5 innings and not walk more than 3 or 4 guys. As for Jonathan Clase, I don't think he has the same ceiling that Prelander Berroa does. He's more of a speed type of guy, and the hit tool hasn't really come around. He's still striking out at a 26.7% clip at high A, or at A ball, excuse me. So, as you mentioned, you're not going to be getting a top 100 prospect for Gleyber Torres, but if you can take these guys in and develop them properly, especially Berroa, I mean, I want to emphasize Berroa would be a really nice pickup for this Yankee squad. You could either, as you mentioned, trade them down the road, or they become parts of your future, right? Look at what the Yankees did with Clayton Beeter from the Joey Gallo trade. He was someone who had command issues, and he comes to the Yankees. He's striking out over 40% of batters, which is ridiculous to think about. This team knows what they're doing when it comes to development. This team has drafted a lot better lately. I don't want people to think we're just sitting here saying trade Gleyber for scraps. Festa's a quality reliever. Berroa has a phenomenal arm. And if Clase ever figures out, how to produce at the major, produce league average offense. I mean, he's got an 80 grade speed tool. He stole 55 bases last season at A ball, so the Yankees can't keep Gleyber if they don't want to extend him, right? They can't, if they feel like they're young guys. I've mentioned this before. Is Oswaldo Cabrera's defense and base running going to outmatch Gleyber's just raw offensive value? Is Oswaldo Cabrera at second base going to be able to provide you more value than Gleyber can? Can Volpe provide you more value than Gleyber can? If the answer is even maybe, or it's pretty likely, then you have to move Gleyber Torres. You save the money, you get prospects, and you're playing your better players. You have to optimize your team. I love Gleyber. I think we're both in lockstep here. Gleyber is not someone we dislike. I very much like Gleyber Torres. And I do think that if he does stay, I'm not going to be upset about it, right? If he stays, I'll be more than glad to root for Gleyber Torres. He's my guy. He's a great player. And I, the ideal outcome is he goes out next season, he hits 30+ home runs, and he has a 130 WRC plus and a Gold Glove, and he's a special player for us. But that's not the realistic outcome. And so, the Yankees have to at least explore options. And I think, as you mentioned, a lot of people are going to be kind of underwhelmed. You're not getting Brandon Woodruff or Pablo Lopez for Gleyber Torres. It doesn't start with Gleyber Torres. It starts with Oswald Peraza, right? Or, Oswaldo Cabrera or Austin Wells or Everson Pereira. It doesn't start with Gleyber. But he is a good player. And I think that we're getting good prospects back if we were to make a deal like this and the Yankees improve long-term in a 3-year window. You look at it in that type of sense, the Yankees would be a better organization if they made that deal.
Absolutely. But guys, I left your perspectives below in the YouTube comments. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, enjoy your Tuesday, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.